Let's just say it. Neji Hyuga might be one of the worst characters in all of Naruto. Yeah, I know, that sentence alone probably made half the fanbase furious. But before you start typing in the comments about how Neji was misunderstood or Neji was a genius, hear me out. Because once you strip away the nostalgia, the tragic speeches, and the cool, gentle fist choreography, what's left is one of the biggest wasted characters in all of shonen history. Neji is the perfect example of a character that had everything. An incredible setup, a brilliant ideology, and the potential to shake the Naruto world, but ended up as nothing more than background noise by the time it mattered. And that's not on him. That's on the writing. But let's break this down, because people still talk about Neji like he was robbed of greatness, when in reality, he just wasn't that deep. When Neji first appeared during the Chunin exams, everyone thought he was going to be Naruto's Sasuke-level rival. He had that cold genius energy, that tragic backstory, that superiority complex that made him instantly compelling. He was everything we thought a prodigy in the Leaf Village should be. Disciplined, sharp, calculating, confident, and let's be honest, kind of an elitist jerk. But that's what made him interesting. He had an ideology rooted in pain. The idea that destiny was absolute, that people were born into their roles, that no amount of willpower could change the curse that life placed on them. It was dark, it was mature, it was real. And for a show about defying fate, Neji's entire worldview was the perfect setup for a long-term ideological clash with Naruto. But here's where the writing dropped the ball. They wrapped that entire philosophical war up in one fight, a fight where Naruto gave one of his classic "I'll prove you wrong" speeches and then punched destiny in the face. That was it. Neji's entire belief system shattered in one battle, not through inner conflict, not through hard lessons, but through narrative convenience. Naruto didn't just beat Neji, he broke his entire worldview with a few words and a shadow clone. And after that, Neji's story lost its teeth. Sure, he had a few cool moments, the chitin, the 8 trigrams palm, the whole genius of the Hyuga title. But from a writing perspective, he was done. His rebellion was neutralized, his ideology was solved, and his personality was softened to make him likable again. He went from being a complex, bitter genius to being a polite, supportive teammate, which might sound nice on paper, but in reality, it made him forgettable. He stopped being the rebel voice against the corrupt Hyuga system and became just another shinobi background character in Team Guy. Think about it. Rock Lee got more emotional screen time, Tenten got more memes, and even Might Guy got more closure. Neji, the supposed genius of the Byakugan, faded into the background of a story that could have made him revolutionary. And let's talk about his clan. Because the Hyuga clan might be one of the most underused world-building concepts in Naruto. The idea of a noble family divided by a curse mark system, where one branch lives in luxury while the other lives in servitude, is one of the most fascinating pieces of lore in the entire series. That could have been its own arc. That could have been Naruto's next moral war. The idea of breaking generational systems, freeing families from internal oppression, challenging the Leaf's hypocrisy. And who better to lead that story than Neji Hyuga, the side branch prodigy who literally lived his entire childhood as a slave to the main branch. He could have become a revolutionary, not just within the Hyuga clan, but in the entire world of shinobi politics. Imagine a Neji arc where he doesn't just accept Naruto's optimism, but challenges it, where he takes Naruto's ideals and applies them in his own way, leading a quiet rebellion within the Hyuga system, forcing change from within. That's what a character like Neji deserved. Instead, the story buried that potential under layers of neglect and fan service. Leave a like and subscribe if you like these videos.
Shikamaru and Ino's fathers.
And then came his death, one of the most disappointing, narratively insulting deaths in shonen history. Neji didn't die fighting for the Hyuga clan. He didn't die confronting destiny or breaking the system that enslaved him. He didn't even die for his own beliefs. He died to save Hinata, and by extension, to fuel Naruto's romance subplot. Let that sink in. The prodigy of the Hyuga clan, the boy who challenged fate, who questioned destiny, who symbolized rebellion, died as a prop to push Naruto and Hinata closer together. His death wasn't about him, it was about them. And that's why it's so infuriating. Fans call it symbolic, but symbolic of what? Of wasted potential? Of narrative convenience? It's not poetic, it's lazy. Kishimoto had an opportunity to make Neji's death meaningful. Imagine if he sacrificed himself to free the Branch family from the curse mark, or to protect the village in a way that mirrored his original ideals. That would have been legendary, but instead he was impaled by random wooden spikes in a war where hundreds of nameless characters died in the background. And then everyone moved on like nothing happened. Naruto cried for 2 minutes, Hinata held his hand, and boom! Neji's gone, forgotten by the next arc. And let's not ignore the cold reality. Neji wasn't that powerful by Shippuden standards. The Byakugan, which was hyped early on as one of the strongest dojutsu in the series, became irrelevant. The Sharingan evolved into literal god powers while the Byakugan stayed the same. Gentle Fist looked elegant in Part 1, but by the time people were throwing meteors and summoning gods, it looked laughable. Neji was a martial arts master in a world where people were rewriting reality. He didn't evolve, he didn't adapt, and the story didn't care enough to let him. The once feared prodigy became obsolete. Not because he couldn't grow, but because the story refused to give him space to, and that's the real tragedy. Not that Neji died, but that Neji never lived up to who he was supposed to be. He was introduced as a mirror to Naruto, a genius who believed in fate versus an underdog who believed in freedom. And instead of exploring that duality across the series, Kishimoto closed that book before Shippuden even began. Neji never got to challenge Naruto's idealism as an adult. He never got to confront the Leaf's dark systems. He never got to live long enough to see the world change. He just became a talking point, a character fans bring up to prove they remember the good old days. That's not greatness, that's nostalgia. But here's what hurts most. Neji could have been one of the greatest characters in all of Naruto if the story had the courage to let him go against the grain. Imagine a timeline where Neji survives the war, grows disillusioned with the new Hokage system, and becomes a reformer who fights to free future generations from the curse of destiny. That's a story. That's what the Hyuga deserved. Instead, we got a character who preached fate, got punched once, changed his mind, then died for romance. It's sad, it's frustrating, and it's exactly why I say Neji might be one of the worst characters in Naruto. Not because he's weak, not because he's badly written, but because he was written small in a world where he could have been massive. And I already know the comments are going to be split. Half the people are going to say, you're insane, Neji was amazing, and the other half are going to quietly nod and admit that, yeah, he was wasted. Because deep down, you know I'm right. You remember that feeling of awe during the Chunin exams, when Neji dismantled Hinata and talked about destiny like a philosopher warrior. And you realize that level of presence never came back. Neji didn't get worse because of time. He got forgotten. And that's worse than being hated. Neji Hyuga wasn't a genius of destiny. He was a victim of it, both in the story and in the writing itself.